Hi, I'm Nina, instructor at Paint a Miracle. I'd like to show you some of my art. These pieces can be found on my website, ninacaruso.com. I work with acrylic, oil, and encaustic paints. I typically work on canvases with the exception of the encaustic paints. With the encaustic paints, I work on materials such as this, which is a wax paper, or I work on boards, wooden boards, such as this. It's a wooden panel, so that the wax can be layered many times. One of my favorite projects is making mandalas. So mandala patterns are basically designs that come from the center and go outward. And we can see mandala patterns in nature, such as in this flower. Mandala is a Sanskrit word for circle. You can also see in these other plants how you have your design in the center coming outward. These are Tibetan monks here creating a mandala. These are examples of other mandalas found. This is a rose window, which could be found in a church, and this is a Celtic knot. Also, a mandala pattern can be found in the Aztec calendar. And then we'll look at just some designs that can be created when making a mandala. So as you can see, they're all very different. And ours are going to be very different as well. So to start off with our mandala, you will need some circle shapes to trace. I'm using lids from containers or plates. You could use cups or bowls so that you get a variety of sizes for your mandala. I'm going to use regular copy paper. It's 8.5 by 11. You could use whatever artist paper you have. You will need a ruler, a pencil, and a marker, an eraser if you don't have a good eraser on your pencil. And we're going to color these with colored pencil. I have all of my materials on a paper bag. That's especially for when I get to the part where I use the marker so that it doesn't bleed through. So to start off, I'm going to show you how to make a mandala, and then just with a brief demo, and then I will start it over again with you. So first you can watch how to briefly do it, and then we'll begin again and you'll join me. So I'm gonna just move my colored pencils out of the way. I won't need those just yet. Really what I need to start with is my pencil, one piece of paper, my circle tracers. Oh, I wanted to mention too, if you had a compass and you're used to using these, you can use one of these to make circles, but that's not required. I start with my largest circle first, and I center it somewhere on the page. And then I go to the next smallest. Really want to try and center this. And if you're having a hard time telling if it's centered or not, you can just a little bit measure around the outside edges to see that it's the same distance. That looks pretty good. I'm going to trace very lightly just in case I want to adjust anything. You'll notice I have this piece sticking out. I'm not going to trace that. I can just rotate my lid and trace that little section that I missed. Just going to continue, and yours will be different depending on what lid or plate or cup or bowl you're using. Again, I'm just trying to center it within this next circle. Trace that. So these two are really close together. This is further apart. And all of this is going to allow for elements of interest. Now, you might even want a smaller circle in the inside. This is what I have, so this is what I'm going to work with. From here, we want to be able to find the middle. I could even check for the middle. I'm measuring my paper. That looks like about the middle to me. Let's see how it is here. So find your middle point. And from there, what we're going to do is divide the circle up into pieces. So I have a vertical line now. I'm going to also do a horizontal line. And I'm only drawing these lines fairly lightly inside my circle. I don't need them outside. So I have the 4 quarters now. And from here, so I've made almost like, if you can see, it's like a plus sign. Now I'm going to make an X to divide these further. So for that, I want to get an idea of a more exact in the center. I'm just going from line to line here and just estimating where the center is. You can also eye it. But if you have a ruler, it's helpful to use your marking points in the center. So now I'm going to go across my circle. Remember, I'm going to make that X very lightly. Some of these lines I'm going to want to erase. You don't have to, but you might want to. So it's better if they're lighter in case you want to erase them. So now I have it laid out how I need it for my mandala pattern. From here, I can decorate it however I want, but the key is you want to repeat whatever you do within that concentric circle. So for example, if I were to put an oval here, I would also do it here and here and here. I like to turn my paper as I go. And so that you have that same shape inside of each. I can see that this one's a little bit kind of crooked. Now it's almost like I have a flower inside. And this can be any shape that you want to do. If I wanted to do some squares that line up inside of my shapes, they don't look exactly like squares now, they look more like a rhombus. So I do a flat line there, match the sides. And try to do it so it matches up all around. You can see my shapes are a little bit off, where these are larger over here and these are maybe smaller, so we can do some adjusting. That's why it's nice to have an eraser. And maybe from here, I want to make a kind of a V shape. Go around and do that here. Now these shapes are anything you come up with. What the rule is, whatever shape you make, you continue it all the way around your circle. And then it will be a mandala pattern, meaning the designs are starting in the center and coming out, but within each row or concentric circle, you're repeating. So maybe here I want to put some circles on the tip. And if I do that, I'm going to go all the way around and do that as well. And sometimes the design you make then helps you think about the next one you want to do. So maybe from here, I'm just going to come around. Sort of go do sort of an outline on those circles. And then come down the line that I drew to separate my sections. You can use those lines in your design if you wish. And so maybe I really quite like that, so I might follow that same pattern. The only problem with working on a bag is sometimes you have a wrinkle there, so you might take the bag apart so it's only one layer. I'm going around and I'm just making that same line, but I'm adding one next to it so that it will be like a thicker outline. Again, these are just whatever you should decide for your pattern. I'm just modeling what could be done. So from here, I can decide maybe I want to have a new shape put in here. Maybe what I could do is go around each one of these. I'm doing 7, so I'm trying to keep it at 7. 7 of these kind of scallop shapes. They're going to vary a little. That one I had to put 8 in there. That one too. Some of these spaces are a little bit wider. Don't worry, they're not going to be exact, but it's looking good. So from here, I can just think about what other shapes I might want. I might do kind of a reverse triangle that sort of hides in there. That's a little too far over. I need to be careful not to draw so dark because it's hard to erase when I do that. It's just starting to look almost like a star pattern when I'm doing this. I like the way that that's looking. So it's coming along. Maybe I want to do that same idea where I had the dots at the end. I'll circle tips on my triangle. just to kind of keep the pattern consistent. And then in here, maybe I think I might do something in this very thin row of circles. I might just put some line separations in here, and then maybe when I go to color it, I will color it black and leave some white, kind of an A-B pattern every other. It'll be black, white, or I could do 2 different colors. It's nice to think about small designs and large designs. So I think now you're getting the idea. I think it's time that you could start with me and make your own. So I am going to remind you again, just to begin in this part, we're going to be using pencil, eraser if you have one handy, and a ruler. You'll need 1 piece of paper to start with, and your circle tracers. Later, as we're working together, we can start to color with the colored pencils. We will use the Sharpie to do our outlines of the lines we're going to keep when we're ready to do the coloring. But for now, I'm going to invite you to begin with me. Once you have your materials, you can place your largest tracer and just center it the best you can on your paper. This doesn't have to be perfect. You can always cut these out later too if you want them to be a circle shape. So again, just trace lightly. Start with your largest, work your way down to the smallest. Before I suggested, if you weren't sure, like if that looks a little bit off, you could check it. Checking on this side, it's about 1.5 inches. And when I check it on the other side, it's only 1 inch. So that's kind of how I know that it's not centered, but I think you can also tell visually. And again, these don't have to be perfect. These are created with your hand, not by a computer. And that's what's so lovely about handmade artwork. You can see that there was an artist who actually had their hands on the materials and created these lovely images. I think this is, I'm going to do this one next. It's important to go largest to smallest because then you can center it a little bit better. You see where the last circle is you drew. It's really close, so it's a little bit hard to tell if I have it centered right. All right, there we go. Again, you might have a smaller circle in here, and I could even demonstrate that. Just as I said, if you had a compass, you could use that, but it's not required. I'm just going to use this one to get a little bit smaller one because yours may have a smaller circle inside. And even if you didn't have a compass, you could draw your smaller circle by hand or even trace something like a quarter or a $50. So again, you want to find your center and you can just kind of eye it, or you can measure kind of where it is on your paper. Across this is the circle is about 8 across, so 4 is going to be somewhere there where that is, and I can do it this way too and find it the same way, right, like where the 4 mark is. Again, I'm going to do this plus sign first, and I'm going to draw it lightly because I might not want to keep these lines. So the horizontal and the vertical lines inside the circle. So now we have it in quarters. And we're going to also do that pizza cutting, kind of where we are going to then split this into 2 pieces. And again, that's going to be estimating. What I did before was just kind of put my ruler here. I'm going to get it matched up there. So I can see where the halfway mark would be. You can eye this if you want. It doesn't have to be exact, but you want to find the halfway mark in between each of these quarters. They're going to turn into 1/8 of a slice now. Okay, so I have my marks. Again, I'm just going to lightly draw that. Turns out to be an X within my concentric circles. So now I have it divided so I can begin my mandala pattern. Now, something else I wanted to mention, and this is, again, it's not required, but some of you may have things like this, stencils that have different shapes or even possibly designs in them. I had one that was pretty interesting that had some kind of squigglies and things. Now, this is just something to think about later, or if you have them on hand and you wanted to try another mandala and use that. I'm still going to just do mine by hand, and I'm going to start mine a little bit different than I did before. So I have the smaller circle this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to purposefully go around and make this curve. Now, your designs are whatever you do. I'm making this curve because it's going to be half my flower petal. I like doing flower designs in mandalas. It's not required. Now I'm going to go the opposite way. You see how I like to turn my paper as I go because it's a mandala, and each of these shapes are repeated all the way around in the circle that I'm working in. So now that's the center of my mandala. If I wanted to, I could erase, especially if I drew lightly enough, and I could put even a smaller circle in here. Okay. I could continue my petals by maybe making it go from this tip here to the inside of the flower. Continue that design all the way around. And now at this point, it's whatever I want to do next. So I might think about doing some leaves. So it would be the outside of this flower. You could continue doing petals if you want, if you like the idea of a flower. This could be leaves, or it could just be a design. And then I might erase that light circle there because these can all become leaves. And from here, I really think I want to trace these. Because I might want to start to do a design. Getting a little bit off here from my tracing. I'm just kind of mirroring the shape that's already there with leaf. Similar to how I did on my last drawing, so I had that outline. This is a little bit of a thinner outline. Again, you can use any shapes you want. Maybe you want to start incorporating some circles or squares or rectangles. Sometimes I might want to put a shape inside of a shape. I think for this one, I think I'm going to start and do a heart shape here. maybe for another design, I might start to do those scallops, and I'm doing them in reverse this time. Some of them are 7, some of them are 8, depending on how much space I have in between. Now within here, I have the opportunity to divide this into sections, and I might do it matching just what I've done in the scallops. Again, it's nice to have that contrast between smaller shapes and larger shapes. It provides this element of interest in your work. Maybe if I go like this, it's a bit more accurate. Bringing down the line from where the scallop was. Tracing over those lines of the shape. So from here, I can think about some other interesting lines. If this is my leaf, I can put some details in here. Again, if I'm going to do it in one, I want to repeat it in all of them. So I can fill some things inside that empty space, or I can leave it. I think maybe I'm going to do some reverse hearts, because I have some space there and I can do something with it. And then, as you recall, we did look at some other images. So you can have some images handy while you're doing your designs, or you can just look at the work and see what you think might work well. I'm going to do some zigzags. And it ends up being 2 triangles in the center and 2 meeting off at the sides. And for the outside, I think what I might do is think about sort of mimicking that idea of those leaves that I made before. I'm going to connect these with this scallop idea. Like a rainbow arch. Put some of the same shape on the inside, just smaller. And I can have the opportunity to color that differently when I get to the coloring part. I want to put some lines in here. Same thing, I'm just kind of mimicking that same line that arc line that I drew up above. I'm putting 2 more below. And darken in this line, because this line I do want to keep. As I said, some of your circle lines, you're going to want to keep the whole circle. Some of them you're just using it as a guide to draw your designs. And I'm going to actually erase my outside circle lines because I like the way these petals are creating a nice shape for the outline of my mandala. You could leave your outline of your mandala a circle, or you can erase it after you've created some designs in there. I think I might just cap those off with a little circle shape. So at this point, I would probably just go around and correct anything that looks like it needs a little bit of changes. But I'm not too worried about it being perfect. These are all going to be unique. From here, I would take my Sharpie and start to trace the lines that I want to keep. And I can always erase the ones I don't want later. For example, I'm not going to keep these here, these straight ones, for when I sectioned it off in the X and the plus, but I can erase those later. So when you go in and you're tracing, you can also make some corrections if you see something needs to be a little bit shifted. Like that petal I just made a little bit thicker. Again, when you do your Sharpie, it will bleed through depending on the paper you have. So I do have my grocery bag underneath. Now from here, I had those petals underneath, so I'm just gonna draw those out. Sometimes it's easier if I go around and just make the same shape and go the opposite way and reverse it. And then this part I wanted to make that same line again. Oh, that one went a little too far, but it's marker. I can't erase it, but that's okay. It happens. Might have been going a little bit too fast there. I have my hearts to trace. You'll be tracing whatever shapes you made. Again, use is going to look completely different than mine. Tracing one of my circles that I want to keep. for all those little scallop shapes, there'll be a certain color or color pattern. And then I'm going to trace the outer circle because I want those little square shapes to be a certain color or a certain pattern that's different from the scallops. So the idea here is to trace absolutely everything you want to keep with the marker, and then we're going to erase any of those lines we don't need. I like to do that trick where I make the same mark. This is an angle, so I can just continue it as I go around my circle. Now I've gone all the way around, so now I can continue it the opposite way. And that helps me to keep that same mark that I'm making all the way around. You might try that too. Turn your paper as you go. Oops, not there in the right place, but that's okay. Right, and then I did decide I wanted to keep this circle as well, so I'm going to go all the way around. So those triangles might be alternating colors. Ones pointing out might be one color, and the ones pointing in might be another. You can decide all of that when it's time to go and color it. And now I'm going to work to get that same shape of what I was kind of bringing back into my design, which reminded me of that leaf that I made in the beginning. This will be the tips of my mandala. I'll go back and do the opposite side. So if you're ever stuck with ideas, you can look up mandalas and you can look up different patterns and shapes and see what you might want to try in yours. Sometimes it just kind of develops as you go. You get good ideas for what to do next from the last thing you did. So when I made these shapes, I decided that I was going to do this sort of this rainbow arc in between all of them. So I wanted something a little bit more tucked in so that these stuck out further. Now on to the second one. I think I'll do the second and third at the same time. Now you can always do the same project and watercolor paper with the Sharpie marker and then paint it. I'm going to be using colored pencil, and I'm just using my 8.5 by 11 copy paper, so I would not want to use watercolor in this. I remember that I had some designs in here. I think I do have a Sharpie. Let me go in there. Some of your finer lines, you might want to use a pen or a very fine tip Sharpie. I feel like if I went over those with a regular Sharpie, that they would be just too thick and they would run into each other. And once you're done outlining all the lines you want to keep, I'll just erase all the lines you don't want, and you're ready to add your color. So if you're there now, you can erase any lines that you don't need anymore. Oftentimes when I trace, I still can see the pencil line underneath from what I traced. So you'd want to take a good look and make sure that you went over everything. And then from there, you can do your erasing. It doesn't take the colored pencil too long to, the Sharpie too long to dry. So you shouldn't get any smearing going on. However, if you're using a marker that is not permanent, like a Sharpie, it might take a little bit to dry. So it is important to erase any of those pencil lines that are still showing because some of your colors might not go nicely on top of them. Like for example, if I colored yellow over them, I could probably still see the color. I could probably see the pencil underneath. If I tried to put a light color on top. To turn my paper as I go too, so I'm not missing anything. I start with the center and I work my way out just the way I drew it, but whatever works for you, I just don't want to miss any of my marks. So once you feel you have your pencil lines erased, you could go back in and see if there's any spots that need to be maybe cleaned up. Like, for example, I see this heart doesn't exactly touch onto that next shape. That's a little bit bumpy there. I might smooth that out. You can also think about using the black for some areas if you wanted to. For example, I could color this in here with the black. And I might think about if I'm going to do that, I might do these very outside circles in black. If it's not required, you can just go right to your coloring. And I'm thinking about using this black as a color in my design. Similarly, I can color in this whole space here, which would be the background where the hearts are inside that circle. If you're not fond of black, you certainly don't have to do this step. You can just start coloring in your shapes, and I would recommend starting from the center and moving out just like we designed them. And if you are going to do one color, you have your choice to repeat that. Like for example, with my flower, I could make that all one color like yellow, or I might do a pattern of like AB, do yellow, orange, yellow, orange, yellow, orange. So thinking about consistency all the way around your circle, whatever you decide that it continues in a pattern.
So I'm going to continue going around within this concentric circle, filling in the space with black. I do need to be careful when I get around those areas where I have the scallops. Now remember, you do not have to use the black marker to fill in space. This is just something I'm choosing to do. And when I'm finished, I'll start my coloring.
Sometimes it helps to go outside of the lines you already drew with the marker. And then you just have a little bit of space to fill in from there. And you don't have to worry about running into areas you don't want to color in. I like the contrast of some areas being very, very dark and light. So it's similar to what I had shared about very small shapes and large shapes, or very detailed shapes and then larger shapes. So you want to think about those kind of design elements in your work. And this can really help too if you like the idea of coloring in with the black Sharpie, because I'm going to have some areas that are filled in with a lot of dark, areas that are primarily still space where I could put colors, and some in between, kind of like the leaves. When you look at the leaves in here, they're a little bit black and white. You could always make a mandala that's strictly black and white, and that is quite beautiful as well. So I could go around and spend some more time getting those spaces filled in, but I'm anxious to color, as I'm sure you are too. Maybe you have already started. So I think I am going to do that A-B pattern that I had talked about with my flower. So all these first petals, I'm just coloring in with the yellow. Now with colored pencil, it layers quite beautifully. So if you're not getting such good saturation, just keep going over it. It's not so much a matter of pressing hard, it's just keep going over it with layers. You can also mix colors too. So I'm thinking when I'm done with this orange, I might layer over with yellow again because this orange is quite bright. Maybe I want it to blend a little bit nicer with my yellow petals. So it does feel like it's from the same flower. So as I said, you can blend colored pencils. I'll get a new color now. So I'm going to get a very soft orange instead of that intense orange that I was having before. Now, yours didn't have to be a flower. This didn't even have to be a flower, but I was kind of going with that theme. And since I was, I am going to color in the next shape, which I purposely made look like a leaf. I'm going to color that in green. Now I can alternate my greens if I wanted to. I could do light green, dark green if I wanted to. So with the hearts, I might think, traditional, they're red, but I feel like what I'm gonna do is make them a shade of green. So I'm gonna stay with this green here that I did the leaves with, but I think I'm gonna add a bit of yellow to it. Again, colored pencils are just really great for layering and getting new colors and really getting a nice covering of color on your paper. So now I have those colored green. I could decide that I'm going to do the others in a different color. I do have a different green here. I could try that out. And then maybe this color, it's a bit of a blue-green. Maybe I would start to use this color somewhere else in the design. So if you have any questions as you are watching this or working along with me, write them down and you can contact me during my office hours. And I would be happy to help you out further. Basically, I will just continue to add color in all of my areas. of my mandala. This one I would have a different idea on not doing the hearts red, but I like the idea of adding red in here because red and green are complementary colors. So I think that will help it to pop a little bit more instead of just leaving that space white. You could leave some spaces white purposely if you wish, but you might want to add some color. And then for here, I might decide that all of my scallops are going to be red, and then all the squares beyond that are going to be maybe a pattern of colors. Maybe I might bring back that yellow-orange idea from the inside. You can see where some of these got really small, either the way I drew them initially or the coloring in with the black or a combination of the two, but that's okay. I still think it's quite beautiful. And this is where I had said that I was going to alternate, but you know what I'm going to do first? I'm going to go ahead and color them all yellow. I better be careful not to go over the black too much or it won't stand out anymore. Coloring them all yellow because I did add some yellow to that orange, and I'm going to do the same thing by first doing a layer of yellow and then doing every other square the orange color. Again, it's important to continue with a pattern so that your mandala looks consistent within each of these concentric circles that you drew designs, that your colors also have the same pattern going throughout that circle. So this is one thin circle that I'm doing with squares, and I want it to have a pattern. It could all be yellow if I wanted to, but I want it to be yellow-orange. So I laid down some yellow first because I do remember when I worked with that orange, I mixed those colors just to kind of tone down the orange a little. It's fun to mix colored pencils and see what you get. You get completely new colors that you don't have in a colored pencil. For example, that's the yellow and green, and it's a really beautiful spring green. Okay, so sometimes you end with an odd amount, which I did, so just make that up. I'm going to add another square in there so that this one could be orange. There we go. And then I did use this new color when I was making those. I'll add a little bit more back to it so it's more obvious, the blue-green. I think I want to add that in here too. Maybe all the triangles pointing out will be one color. I could have alternated. I could have done an AB pattern, an ABC pattern. AB pattern is when it would be like blue, orange, or ABC, it might go blue, orange, yellow, blue, orange, yellow. That's what we mean by when we say AB or ABC. I'm curious to know what kind of shapes you put in your mandala, what kind of color choices you picked. Sometimes it's nice to have set colors ahead of time, and other times it's just kind of nice to just go along and decide what colors you're going to use as you go. I like to kind of bring back the same colors that I did before. It's okay to use a variety of colors, but it's also nice to be consistent with them. So if I use red, I'm going to purposely try to use it again somewhere instead of just use it one time. And then you have more of a unity going on where your work is more united as far as color. Same thing we did with shapes. We repeated shapes. It's more unified in color and design. And that's really what a mandala is as well. Repeated color, shapes, and design from this concentric circle going outward. And then I would just continue from there. I'll go back to my blue-green color again for the insides of these. You can see that I'm not getting a very good layer going on here. It's not a very good coating, so I will either choose to go over this again with the same color, or maybe I might pick the yellow. And when you're done applying all of your color, you can always go back and do that too. Apply the same color again on top of a shape, within a shape, or you can think about color mixing. And I had mixed this color before with the yellow and I thought that looked nice. So for example, that's two different colors on top. And this would be just going over the red again in a different way, different cross over. If it's not layering, then just switch the angle that you're applying it. And you can see how now the red is much more vibrant than it is from here to here. Okay, so that's another option too. When you're done, to go back around, I'm just showing you that now because I am going to stop my work for now and let you focus on yours. And again, if you had any questions, you can direct those to me during my office hours. I hope that you enjoy making your mandala as much as I enjoy making mine. They're always going to be completely different. I will still continue to color mine. I might cut this one out and then glue it onto a colored piece of paper when I'm done, or I could just leave it as is. But the possibilities of mandala designs are just endless. So I'm excited to see what you've made. Have a great time making your mandalas. Until next time, bye.